business is kind of intensely, it required a lot of experience and knowledge and whatnot that you get from doing stuff that is very time intensive. Like by selling your time, you learn how to sell your time.
So I'll start by introduction.
Yeah.
So good evening, everyone. Thanks for coming. This is a joint event hosted by Young Americans for Liberty and Disrupt Colby. So Young Americans for Liberty, aka YAL, name change may come soon. We'll discuss that later. But we're a group that promotes entrepreneurship, free thinking, free market capitalism, all that good stuff. And Disrupt Colby is the awesome, kick-ass entrepreneurship group on campus that needs to get SGA recognition very soon. So if there's anyone from SGA here, let's get that. So we're proud to bring you this awesome speaker today, Derek Magill of Praxis. So Derek is a college dropout, business strategist, career expert, and marketer. He dropped out of college during his sophomore year and then went on to create a marketing company that generated millions of dollars in business for his clients. He's currently director of marketing at Praxis, which is a startup apprenticeship program that's providing an alternative to the traditional college system that we all think we have to participate in. He has been a guest lecturer for the Foundation for Economic Education. He's spoken at dozens of conferences at universities internationally in Europe, in South America, all over the US. So without further ado, let's all welcome Derek Magill.
Thanks, guys. I'm really glad to be here. Sorry you guys are having trouble with SGA or whatever. I remember when I was in college, they were terrible. They were so hard to navigate. But I understand we can get that one day. Anyway, yeah, guys, thanks for having me. I've talked with a number of you guys already, and I've really enjoyed the conversations that I've been having. I guess the topic of tonight is something that's very near and dear to me, and probably to all of you guys, which is how to build a career, essentially, how to go out and get job opportunities for yourself and make yourself stand out in the job market. And it's unfortunately something that college students today are not getting a whole lot of. And I've seen it firsthand. I've seen hundreds and hundreds of people graduating great universities, great grades, having done everything that they've been told to do, and then they still can't find good job opportunities. And they think that the thing that we're told in the media, and the thing that we're told by administrators and politicians is that there's no jobs available, and that companies have gone away, they've gone overseas, and that there's simply a much more competitive market. And in a certain sense, that's true. But in my own work at Praxis, and I'll explain more what we do. In my own work at Praxis, though, and with clients and around the world, I've experienced the opposite thing. I've experienced business owners telling me time and time again that the number one challenge they have growing their business is that they can't find enough people. They can't hire enough people. They have hundreds and hundreds of applicants, and nobody stands out, and they simply don't hire them. So that's a problem. And you guys as young people in college today, you're going to be coming out into a world like that, in which all of the things that businesses are looking for, you essentially, for the most part, haven't been taught in school. And these are things that I've had to learn kind of over the last 4 years since I dropped out of school, building a career without a college degree, kind of figuring out how to navigate the process in a world that says everybody has to have a degree, and if you don't have a degree, you're never going to get hired. And I think I figured out a pretty good system that has worked in, it continues to work in careers that amaze me. I've seen, young people, for example, who are high school dropouts get jobs as news anchors. I've seen kids who are 16 years old leading sales at startups and making, $120,000 a year. I've seen kids get jobs as the chief of staff at a venture capital-backed company, $10 million in VC funding, no college degree, right-hand man to CEO. And so I've seen a lot of interesting things over the last couple of years, and I'll try to break it down for you guys kind of throughout the course of this talk. And I'll keep it quick. What I like to do typically with these things is, typically people have a lot of questions. I'd like to, basically talk about what some of your career goals are and how each of you guys can get started right now. And really, while I think it's fun to come to a college campus and tell people to drop out of school, and it's always amusing. That's not really my goal, even though I do think, in general, the world is moving towards a place where kids are not going to be going to college. They're going to be doing other things. And I want to see that world, and I want to help bring it about. But I think in the meantime, the thing that you guys should be considering, whether you stay in school or not, is by the time I'm 23 or 24, my number one goal should be that I'm more interesting than my degree status. Meaning that when people think about me, and they look at me and they ask me, who are you? I can say something beyond, I went to this school, I got these grades, and I have this major. And that's something that is very hard for most young people to do, and it was certainly very hard for me. I think we've all probably experienced going to a family party, and the only thing people are interested in hearing about is what school you're at and what degree you're getting. And they all want to tell you their advice for something, and I think that's what you're up against, and that's what you should spend the next 1, 2, or 3 years focusing on. So I will kind of break down my own career path. I'll tell you a little bit about Praxis first. I'm not here to sell you guys on that, but essentially we are a startup apprenticeship program for young people who want more than the traditional college path. So we take people who are anywhere from 16 to 25 years old. We put them through a 6-month boot camp where they learn everything about marketing and selling themselves in the real world. They learn a ton of professional skills that they're not really getting in school. They learn how to build a solid digital footprint for themselves and a personal brand for themselves. And then they get placed at a startup where they work full-time. They're paid $15 an hour during that 6-month period. They learn the ins and outs of business. They learn tons of skills, ranging from sales, marketing, operations to generalist kind of business skills. And at the end of the program, the vast majority of people get a full-time job with no college degree. Right now, we have an average income of about $55,000 a year and an employment rate of 98%. So we're kicking the pants off of college. We've been really happy about that. I'm happy to talk more about that in the QA period, but I'm the director of marketing at that, and I've been with them for about 3 years now. So my career path and kind of some lessons that I've learned, hopefully that you guys can take as sort of broad principles by which to approach your career. I dropped out of college when I was a sophomore. I went to the University of Michigan. I was studying Latin and Ancient Greek. Not a very marketable skill set, but something that I thought was pretty fun to do. And I dropped out of college because I was no longer finding the experience to be very valuable. I was not getting a whole lot out of my classes. I felt that, and I was learning from professors who, had never actually participated in the market, and I was being taught, how to go out and participate in the market. It didn't really make sense. And it felt like a lot of the information I was learning was either outdated or not relevant to my career goals. I felt like I'd spent the last essentially 18 years of my life jumping through hoops, academic hoops, being told exactly what to do, when to do it, how to do it. And I thought, the real world is not like this. And the longer I wait, the harder it's going to be for me to build a career for myself and to really be successful in the real world. If I wait till I'm 23 or 24 and I graduate, I'm going to be essentially, cast out into a world that doesn't reward you for getting good grades, and doesn't reward you for following all the rules. And there's no syllabus, to tell you all the steps that you need to take for success. So I dropped out. I didn't really have a plan. But once I got out of school, I did a brief thing with a campaign, political campaign, and realized I didn't want to do politics. I was trying to figure out what can I do. I have not a whole lot of skills, not a whole lot of experiences. But I have a little bit. I've managed some Facebook pages for my club. I've created some graphics before and stuff like that. What if I went to this local bar and just said, hey, here's 3 ideas. Here's 3 graphics that I can make. Here's a video that I want to make for you guys, and here's some things we can do with your Facebook page that'll hopefully help drive traffic to your restaurant. And they said yes. I offered to do it for free. And suddenly I had my first job opportunity. I had a client. I had no experience, I had no degree. They never even asked me if I had a degree once I had given them some proposals for what I wanted to do. So that's lesson number 1, is have a value proposition for anything that you approach and anyone that you approach. So the standard way of getting job opportunities, and it's kind of like something that I think we pick up through kind of habits in school, is, okay, I see a job listing, I'm essentially going to sign up for that job listing. I'm going to turn in my resume, and I'm going to turn in my transcript if they ask for it, and I'm going to do my interview, and then I'm going to expect the job. Unfortunately, it doesn't work like that, especially now when everybody else is doing the same thing. I've even worked in hiring before, and I've talked with dozens of business owners who have also kept the same thing. Like, we get thousands of applications for any job listing, and I can tell you from my own experience at Praxis, we did an Indeed listing one time. We probably had 2,000 applicants. Every single one of them had a resume, and every single one had a college degree. how could we possibly ever give anybody a fair shot? And so that's why a value proposition is so important. And a value proposition, and having that is essentially, you look at that company and you say, okay, what are 3 things that I could do for them? And then you go sell them on doing those things for them. You might even propose to do it for free. Because that's the other thing that I think we've been misled about is it's really expensive to hire somebody. When a company hires you, it's not just your salary cost. It's the training cost. It's the opportunity cost of hiring you versus somebody else. It's the cost of recruiting. I work with companies who pay $10,000 for referrals for a computer science person. That's crazy. And the reason they do that is because they can't find enough people. So, I would typically expect if you're making $40,000, the company's probably spent $80,000 to hire you. And so it's really, really risky for them to bring the wrong person on board, which is why proposing to work for free is also a kind of a valuable way to do it. And stop me if you guys have questions, by the way, I'm happy to answer them kind of throughout. So that's principle number 1 is have a value proposition. Whenever you're applying to a new job, when you're applying to an internship, or you're applying to a new opportunity, don't just sit back and be content with turning your resume in. Think really, critically and try to concretize things that you could actually do on the job. Tell them why you're going to create more value for them than you take out in salary. You'll have a much better chance of getting an opportunity. So once I had that initial client, I kind of did the same thing. I went to an e-commerce company. They're a $25 billion e-commerce company, and I pitched them on building an eBay store for them. And the reason I thought that is, I've just seen someone else had an eBay store, and I thought, maybe this company could use eBay and they can kind of tap into an existing customer market. So I went to them and I said, hey, I'll run your eBay store for free for the first month. I'll list all the products. I'll do the shipping and fulfillment. I'll do the customer service. I'll take all the photos for the products. And I'll just manage it. And of course, you guys will get all the money and we'll see what happens. And if you guys like it, we can start, figuring things out from there. And, they said yes. They took a kid who had, essentially 1 freelance client and, not a whole lot of other experience, no college degree. And they let him work on an eBay project for a $25 million e-commerce company. And that was it. And I think that's something to keep in mind. And lesson number 2 is kind of like the bar is low. Like most people are not going through the process of actually explaining why they want to work for someone and what they can do for them. And when you can actually do that, you can really stand out from the pack in ways that you can't imagine. And what's nice about this too is you can start getting opportunities from companies that aren't hiring, that aren't actually listing a job. There was nowhere I could have gone that the company would have said, we're looking for someone to build an eBay store. Because they weren't looking for somebody. But you can essentially create your own position at any company you want by thinking clearly about what you can do for them. So I worked for that company. I had a couple wins. We ended up building that eBay store at about $30,000 a month in sales. And I worked for them for about 4 months building that and managing that. We did an Amazon store together. And then again, used that to kind of get my next couple opportunities as well. Because now I had a history of work. Now I had documentable evidence that I could actually do something in the real world. And that's the other thing that's missing today among today's college graduates, is they're graduating with no work experience. And it's going to be really hard to get professional opportunities for yourself. So, to the extent possible, in the next couple of months, try to find some opportunity to get some kind of part-time work. It really doesn't matter what it is, but if you can get an internship, if you can find some family friend who has a small business and you can propose doing a project for them in exchange for a testimonial or 2, it's huge. It will be so valuable when you're going out to try to get professional opportunities later on in your life. And I can say, with confidence that every single bit of work that I had led to future work. And every project that I did or client that I had made my degree status less and less relevant to anybody else. One other thing that's really, really valuable, and which is super low barrier to get started, and nobody else does this for the most part, is develop a digital paper trail. So I mentioned this earlier, like when people Google you, they should be able to find out what you're all about. And the easiest way to do that is to have a website. Every single one of you guys should have a personal website with your name on it that tells, here's my about information, here's my contact information. Maybe you have a blog where you write about a topic that's interesting to you. Even if you're not an expert right now, it will make your perceived status so much higher in the real world. So one of the ways that I was able to start getting really serious job offers from startups in marketing was not because I just had experience, but because when people were looking me up, I had, a history of writing about marketing. So I started writing about marketing on my blog, I started writing about marketing on Quora, I started doing some podcasts on marketing as well. And suddenly, people would look me up and they said, okay, so this guy actually has a history of talking about these things and actually engaging in these things. And so, whether you want to be a journalist or whether you want to be go into finance or investment banking or whether you want to be a computer science person, you need to get active online now and start creating a sort of paper trail that people can follow and see your history of engaging in that area. So if you write an essay, don't be content with just turning it in and getting an A. Put it up online and share it with the world. If you're doing a bit of code, put it on GitHub. If you want to go into finance later on, start a podcast where you interview finance people, people who are actually in the space. They will say yes because they'll be so flattered some kid wants to interview them. And you can not only build a really valuable network for yourself and learn a ton through that process, but when someone looks you up, and believe me, employers do, when they look you up, they'll say, oh, this is the person who has this finance podcast. Well, it's a natural fit then. Why shouldn't we hire the person who has this? Because now we have actually some history that he really does care about this field and this industry. I like to give the example, I talked to a girl one day at a college, and she was a journalism major. She was 19 years old. And I asked her, what have you written and published? And she was like shocked by the question. She hadn't published anything. I mean, she was studying journalism and she hadn't written anything online. She probably had written some stuff on her own, but she had never published an article. What does that look like, even if she has a degree, compared to someone without a degree who's maybe published 30 articles in a student paper and has a Twitter that's really active and maybe a YouTube account where they talk about current events? Like, who's gonna get the job? It's a no-brainer comparison. And so, right now is a really awesome opportunity for you guys to really build something valuable that will make you stand out later. Get active online, start making something really, really useful and really valuable for other people, and opportunities will come your way. Any question? Oh, okay, sorry. I'm sure you're raising your hand. Okay, so, basically, beyond that, it starts to get, I guess, how do I put it? Beyond that, it really gets into kind of like, how do you identify opportunities that are worth pursuing? And I'll give a couple pieces of advice here, and maybe hopefully we can do some questions. Number one is, sort of reject the idea that you need to prepare more and study more. You've been in school all your life, and kind of the default way of thinking is, I'm going to go out and, if I want to start something, but I'm not good enough yet. I need to go read the textbook, and I need to go take a class on it, and I need to do this and this and this, or I need to wait till I have my degree in order to get permission to get started. Reject that idea, because the chances are that you actually do have enough experience, and the reality is that the best learning actually happens on the job. And so, one of the things I realized pretty quickly when I was getting marketing clients was, it was very hard to study what I needed to do in a book, and so it didn't really help me learning anything until I had already landed a client. And so that's what I did. I would go out and find an opportunity to work with someone on a project that I really didn't know very well. And so I was working with Colliers International, which was one of the largest commercial real estate companies in the country, and I was working on a project doing some pretty substantial design packages for their properties, and I had no clue how to use the software that I was supposed to use. But you can't read about that, and if you wait until you're an expert, until you're trained, until you've taken a class, you'll never get there. So, again, when you're looking for new professional opportunities now, don't underestimate your ability to deliver. In an environment where there's money on the line, I find you typically learn a lot faster, you typically learn a lot better, and you're typically able to get things done in a way where you're not, if you're in a classroom, just accountable to a test alone. So keep that in mind when you're looking for opportunities. Something else to think about is, don't just focus on the formal job market. So you guys are all on campus, I'm assuming you guys all have college career fairs and stuff like that. The reality is that while working at some of these big companies like a Google or an Apple or like a Ernst & Young or Deloitte or whatever, those are oftentimes not where the best opportunities for professional learning happen, or professional income, or professional growth. What I've realized in my work at Praxis, and one of the things we do is we place young people at startups. The reason we're able to do that is because there are so many businesses, far more businesses than not, that can't afford the cost of going to college recruiting fairs. They can't afford the time of going to college recruiting fairs. And you will never hear about them on college recruiting fairs or traditional job listing sites. And these are the opportunities where you can go in and you can work on a team of 20 to 30 people, and you can be on the floor with the CEO on a daily basis. You can build a really awesome network of people. You can see the ins and outs of how the business is run as opposed to being compartmentalized in one little role. And by the time you're 2 or 3 years in, you can have a much higher rank on the totem pole than you would if you went into one of these bigger firms where they have much more strict hierarchies and much more strict timelines. The other thing to kind of keep in mind is these companies that are not on college campus fairs have far less competition, and you can go out and get really cool opportunities. I know startups, for example, who just simply don't really know how to recruit well, and they're thrilled to have some young person come in and say, here's what I want to do for you, and you can get a job today. Every single one of you guys could go out and get a job today, no question. Job today, this week, no question. Because there's so many businesses that simply aren't participating in these traditional job fair, traditional job market things. So keep that in mind when you're looking for opportunities. Don't just get attracted to, I don't know if you guys have seen Zoolander, but there's that line, it's like, don't be distracted by the beautiful celebrities or something like that. It's like, don't be distracted by prestigious titles of companies and big name firms and stuff like that. There's a lot of really cool opportunities out there where the competition is lower and the upside is higher. Kind of piggybacking off that point, I think the other thing that has allowed me to build a career much faster than I would have been able to. And the kind of, I'm director of marketing now at a startup at 24 years old. That's, a position that's very fortunate, and something that most people aren't able to really get at that age, was, look for opportunities where, you might not make as much money in the short term. Don't be afraid of taking a giant pay cut and, living, very, very cheaply for a short period of time, working for a company that has fast growth potential, or working for a company that has a really awesome CEO who can plug you into a great network. I think a lot of people, they get out, they look for a job, and they look for, okay, this one's paying $60,000, this one's paying $50,000, I'm going to take the one with $60,000. That's not always the smartest decision. I've seen time and again people take the job that has the higher income and then miss out on incredible opportunities that they could have had elsewhere. So consider that when you're looking for your opportunities as well. Don't just go for the immediate salary. Play the long game a little bit. Ask yourself the question of, who am I working for? What's their history? What can I learn from them? How much can I grow at this company? What kind of title can I get at this company? What's the upside potential of this company? Can I get some equity versus a salary? And what's the potential there? These are things to consider. I worked for Praxis. They were a client of mine, and they were. I worked for them for about a year. They were a client of mine before I had my before they made me a job offer, essentially. And at the time, they were so small, they literally couldn't afford to pay me anything other than $200 a month. And so I was essentially working full-time for them on top of all the clients I was working for $200 a month, which is crazy. But it led to things like public speaking, travel. It led to building a really valuable network that has allowed me to move ahead in my career. It's led me to client referrals nowadays that make me far more money than I could have ever made in that short term. And it's been a really tremendously valuable experience. And so I often tell people, and I often find that the best opportunities are not the ones that pay the most immediately. So with that, I guess, I kind of want to talk to you guys about your career goals, and because I find that it's easier to kind of break it down when we can kind of concretize things a little bit. So if you guys have specific goals, specific struggles, specific interest, even if it's not directly career related, if it's project related to or interest related, I'd love to be able to help with that. So thank you guys.
Sorry, I have a question about something you said earlier.
Yeah.
Regarding aiming for smaller companies, 20 or 30 people, and with fast growth potential and stuff like that, I don't want to sound too much like a pessimist, but aren't those companies a lot more likely to fail?
Sure, but you have an awesome story now. Seriously, the idea that a failure is going to limit you in some way. If you got that one job, you can go out and get another job. And the experience of working and actually seeing how the business is run is really valuable, especially when you're at an early age and you might not know what you want to do with your life. It can be kind of overwhelming. You see job opportunities like, where should I go? I don't want to pigeonhole myself. Well, going into somewhere where, you don't necessarily have to be smaller, but the opportunity to get a holistic picture of the business will allow you to start to figure out what you want to do. even if the company fails, it's like, it's not that big of a deal in the end, in the long run. Companies fail. You know, I mean, most successful entrepreneurs have had failed companies before. You know, I started a standing desk business when I dropped out of college. We started basically buying various parts at IKEA stores and basically repackaging them into a standing desk from all these different parts that we bought. And we lost so much money on it because we didn't get our boxes right. We were shipping a 100-pound package in a non-corrugated box, and we did a huge order and shipped it out, and all the boxes got trashed because they weren't structurally sound. And so we lost a bunch of money, and you know, so what? You just did something else. But you know, I think the myth there is that you know, companies with that kind of size, they're not always prone to failure. You know, you got to look at what their product is, what their revenue model is like. You know, ask these kind of questions. Ask figure out what's your profit margin. You know, how are you guys making money? These are important questions to ask when you're looking at a company as well. But I would take, you know, working at a really high risk kind of explosive startup, especially when you're 21 or 22, any day over anything else, because the upside is much higher and the downside is like so minimal.
Yeah, so I was really struck by the sort of idea that you going out to like work for free. I sort of really like that idea that
Yeah.
you're talking about. And sort of my question sort of revolves around actually getting your foot in the door to even do that. What is your strategy in terms of contacting these kinds of businesses that traditionally haven't been as high outreach? Like how do you actually get that sort of first interview, that little crack in the door to actually sort of make yourself heard?
Yeah, that's a great question. There's so many different ways to do it, and you know, you can get really scientific and strategic about it. And I mentioned starting a podcast the other day. Having a podcast is like the most awesome way to get introduced to like high-level people that you would never get to talk to in any other capacity. Because like most of these business owners, they're really cool people, but they've like almost never been interviewed before. And so if you're the kid that comes in and say, I have this podcast, like you will build a network so fast. I'm not joking, it's crazy. And you don't even need to be that good at it. Just get a basic mic and just ask them cool questions, give them a link, and now you have an in with them. You have your email address, you have an excuse to talk to them later on. That's one way to do it. You know, another way is, I think, you know, look, especially when you're first getting started, maybe look for somewhere where you do have a mutual connection. If you have a friend or someone you know that works there, or a family business or something like that, something kind of related to that is really useful. Other ways to do it though are, you know, like I put out a job listing for Praxis, and the guy we ended up hiring, he had never talked to us before. He was really smart about what he did. He applied through the job channel, but he did it all via video. He made, I think it was 3 videos. One was introducing himself and why he wanted to work for us, and the other 2 were screen shares where he was breaking down his process for building pay-per-click ads on Google and doing SEO, backlinking, and stuff like that. And he went through the whole process of all the keywords he would use for us. And that's something you can do as well. Like if you have a kick-ass proposition, it's okay to just kind of reach out cold to companies. As long as you're short and as long as you're brief and you're really to the point. I think the number one mistake I see is that kids will email and their emails are not very actionable and they're too long and they're badly formatted. If you come to them with like, hey guys, I'm a customer of yours, or I really like what you're doing on this. I have an idea for your Facebook page, X, Y, and Z. One better way to do it, and this depends on the project you're going after, is to do whatever you want to do in advance. So I did a lot of website work for people just because it was a quick way to make money. Built WordPress sites and stuff like that. I would always build a site beforehand, before I pitched anybody. So I just built the website and made it look like what I wanted it to look like. Of course, they would always end up having some edits and stuff like that, but that is so much better than anything else. So that's another way to do it. I think the last thing to remember when you're asking to work for free, don't do it as a favor. Do it as, I want to create value for you. I know you want to, might not want to take a whole lot of risk right now, so I'll do it for free for a month, and then we can talk from there, once I've proven the results. That's kind of the script to use, as opposed to, hey, I want to work for free because I want to learn from you. That's like something that's gonna drive people away. Does that help?
That's great, yeah, thank you.
Cool. So one question, it's kind of a Connor's question. One of the things that I've seen that happen where you can like pitch your proposition and it definitely relates to a job or correlates to a job, but like finding out the proposition is like the hard part. So like what will be some suggestions for someone who, like for example, they see a job posting that says, this is what we generally have them do, but like there's nothing specific that allows you to like develop that
Or at least it's done now.
It's nothing specific that would like indicate to you that you can do something beforehand that tells you,
Yeah,
this is what I can do beforehand, to like tell them that I can program or do whatever.
yeah.
So,
Well, it always depends on the kind of role you're going after. In marketing roles, it's like super easy usually. Programming roles, it might be a little more difficult. I know like with like UX design, I've seen a lot of people like do designs of someone's app, like redesign or do some, user testing and stuff like that, and kind of show areas where they think they can improve it, and kind of outline that and publish that for them. Another thing to do is kind of what I was talking about just a moment ago, is rather than doing exactly what you would do for like for their company, you can outline kind of your process via video. Here's some of the projects I've worked on. And here's how it relates to your company, kind of in the abstract a little bit. That's also another way to do it. In general, I think you get better at it the more experience you get. You're able to see that basically the majority of companies are all struggling with the exact same problems. Once you know that, you realize you can kind of reproduce solutions for all of these companies and really don't have to change a whole lot. But yeah, it depends on the role you're going after. But in general, make a video outlining your process. Do that at the very minimum. One thing that I do, that I like to do is I like to find competitors that are doing something in a similar space. And oftentimes you can kind of see what they're doing, and then you can say, okay, what's the difference? Are these competitors doing something right that this company's not doing? And you can propose something along those lines. And those are things that are typically easier to see. But it requires a bit of practice. And sometimes part of it can come after the interview process even. So if you do the interview, start asking them, what are the problems you have? What are the challenges you have as a company? What's the biggest problem you guys have right now in a development role? Those kind of questions. Once you get that stuff, now you can come back with a serious proposal as well. So that's another way to do it.
Actually, I keep talking, so I'd like to maybe hear people move on. One of the biggest changes in colleges, or this disruptions in college, probably speak from a result from technology, making more pervasive, and also, things like Khan Academy more prevalent. The second one is about changes in the kind of job opportunities, specifically relating to these entrepreneurial YouTubers and Instagrammers and guys who live these crazy lifestyles.
Yeah.
That in Tokyo this summer, I was talking to this guy who's holding a time lapse, and it turns out he has one of the biggest blogs in the world.
Wow.
1 million followers, and he makes $100,000 a year for YouTube views and also kind of sponsorships through Instagram.
Yeah.
And he's not willing to like dozens and hundreds of people like this who are kind of carving out individual positions for themselves and kind of advertising themselves through YouTube. I want to know what do you think the limitations are on that sort of thing, where those sort of individualized, kind of social media based entrepreneurial opportunities go in the future?
Yeah, that's a good question. Well, I'll do the first one first. I guess regarding digital education and stuff like that, I think it's really valuable. I think we live in a time where there's more content that's super easily and cheaply and even freely available to everybody all over the planet, and that has huge implications for what it means to be an expert and the value of centralized authority. When you can crowdsource your education from all over the world, as opposed to getting it at a physical brick and mortar institution, that calls into question the necessity of that institution. At the same time, I don't typically like to place a ton of weight in pure online education, just because I think a lot of what it does is it imports the same classroom structure over to the digital world, and I don't think that's the best way to learn all the time. I think you have to tie your learning to some kind of creative output. You can't just read everything and then be done. So even if you're reading philosophy, I don't think it's enough to just sit around and read philosophy. I think you should start writing about philosophy and actually creating content that shares your knowledge with the world. I think that's a much better way to learn, and it will help you actually one, build a brand for yourself, but two, figure out career avenues through which to kind of take that interest and turn it into something valuable. So I think online education is a tool, but it's not the end-all be-all. I think the end-all be-all is more relating to your second point, which is we have the opportunity now, more than ever, to build our own credential in the real world. Your YouTube account, your Amazon reviews, your Goodreads profile, your blog that you run, your Instagram account, your Facebook account, all of those things, all of those digital assets essentially form degree 2.0 essentially. They're far more valuable than your piece of paper. And so that relates to the vlogging thing as well. Like having those kinds of digital assets and using those strategically will get you opportunities that no degree ever could, no question. I write on Quora a lot. I've had over 1 million views there, and that has led me to clients and speaking opportunities and things that, again, no degree, no credential, official credential would have really gotten me in this time frame. And so, if you're looking to get into that space, I think it's awesome. Just, become a prolific creator. That's the biggest thing. I think it's easy to be overwhelmed by seeing how the quality of the output of some of these guys, and to forget that they all started somewhere. But you just kind of got to get started first and then figure it out as you go. Regarding limitations, I don't know if there's like limitations. I think we're just now experiencing the beginning of it, and I think we're going to see a lot more of this sort of, really heavy focus on having a strong personal brand and being a content creator through some kind of medium, and that's going to be the thing that distinguishes successful professionals from non-successful professionals. I personally wouldn't want to make a full-time career out of it just because I like my work, and I think there's maybe psychological limitations on just being a vlogger. I don't know if that's like a huge fulfilling life for me. Like I travel a lot, and doing that all the time would just kind of suck, I feel like. I don't know. I don't think life's all like play. I think it's fun to really build something valuable. I'm attracted to the idea of people who build railroads and people who build software that changes people's lives, and it's really valuable. I think that's much cooler than someone who has a drone in Bali. I'm sorry, like it's true. That stuff's kind of cool, but once you do it once or twice, it's not that cool anymore, I think. But I think it's valuable. I think you should absolutely consider being a content creator through some medium. And the earlier you start, the better you'll be and the better return you'll get. And you'll start to notice that the return happens quickly. You'll write something or make a video, and you only get a couple hundred views, but one person will reach out, and something special will come from that. Something really valuable will come from that. And even if you only ever get a small number of views, if you have a good history of that stuff, you can always point to that in the job process when you're looking for jobs. You can always point to what you created, and you'll always have that, and no one can ever take that from you. That's pretty cool. I guess the only other limitation I would say is saturation, maybe. Content saturation. A lot of these guys are successful because they're doing something relatively new, essentially. Like Casey Neistat, is really successful because he does something new and unique, but I don't think the solution to be like him now is to copy him exactly. It's to build on top of what he's done and make it be something more valuable and more interesting. Any other questions?
I do have a question. So there was an incident where I sent an application for a job. And one of the things that they said was I didn't see that you had a degree on your resume. So what are some of the things that somebody could, if they were to drop out of college, what are some of the things, even if they've done something, how do they communicate? Because they're definitely, I do agree that some people there are some people out there who don't necessarily care you have a degree, but there are some people who stuck on that concept. So what would you tell that person who's applying for a job without a degree?
Yeah.
What do they need to do to convince the person who thinks they need a degree to do their job?
Yeah, well, it relates to having a value prop or giving yourself you can going into coding and stuff like that. In software, they have the whole free software trial thing. You try it for 14 days, you don't have to spend any money. Give them a free trial of you. Propose that in your application. I'm going to give you a free trial. I will let you. I'm serious. It works. I'll give you a month where it doesn't cost you anything to work with me. And if you can work with me on a contract basis or whatever, if you like it, if it works out, let's continue the relationship. If it doesn't, you're not risking a whole lot. That's one way to do it. I think it's better, especially when you're starting out. Again, whether you're graduating or you don't have a degree, I think it's better when you're starting out to try to go after something where you don't have to go through just a formal application process. So if you can get in touch with a CEO or get in touch with someone who does your job, you'll have more likelihood of getting accepted than you will if you go through the HR department. I knew the guy who founded Praxis, for example, when I reached out to them and pitched him on being a client of mine. I didn't know him very well, but I knew him enough just to reach out to him. I think that way I would have been far less effective if I had just sent him an application. And so, get creative about what your application looks like too. oftentimes just the paper application really doesn't do much for people. But if you make a video, or you put together some work samples, some really awesome work samples, that just blow their mind away, where you come up with some really great ideas for their company, that's gonna make you stand out. But try to find an opportunity maybe, especially now, before you start, before you graduated, try to find an opportunity to do some work for someone else, maybe on a freelance basis. Get onto Upwork or something like that and do some coding work there. There's a ton of work you can get, and once you get that stuff, now you can reference that in your application, and it's gonna increasingly make your degree status, whether you have it or not, irrelevant. That's, I think, probably the missing element maybe in your application.
I have one question where, when you were in college,
Yeah.
your sophomore year, I'm a sophomore as well, did you figure out the reason you wanted to drop out was to have more time to kind of find, like, what you enjoyed? Or did you drop out because you kind of felt like what you were gaining from college was just worthless?
I think it was the second part, really. I didn't quite know exactly what I wanted to do. I knew some stuff, I wanted some time to travel, and I wanted some time to, have a little bit more time away from the things I was doing in school, so I could focus on some intellectual interests. I went to Rome and stuff like that, did some fun stuff there, learning-wise and whatnot. But the biggest thing was more the opposite. It was just like the feeling that I'm banging my head against the wall constantly, doing something I completely hate, and that I find no value in, and that I'm just jumping through hoops. And I figured that wasn't the way to build a good life for myself. And I could always drop out and then come back later on if I wanted. Well, I could, because I skipped my finals, so they kicked me out. I skipped my finals to go to Ron Paul's Christmas party. So the university kicked me out. But in general, if you leave on good terms, you can always go back. And that's something to keep in mind. Take a year off to go try something else and get out in the real world. Because you're not going to learn, you're not going to miss a whole lot. You'll probably actually get a more valuable experience out of college when you get out and start to see some really concrete ways in which your education can actually apply to the real world, as opposed to just studying theory constantly. But for me, it was absolutely just the sense of like numbness that I had waking up every day feeling like I'm just on this college conveyor belt towards nothing. And that I really didn't know what was going to happen at the end of it, and that it was 3 more years of my life, And I figured things out as I went. And once I figured it out, then it became about the opposite. It was about, I love doing my work. I love what I'm doing. I couldn't imagine giving it up to go back.
So, I've asked more questions.
Okay, I'm just, out of curiosity, this is a very specific question, but I'm very interested in, even if I don't want to make a career out of this,
Yeah.
I'm very interested in blockchain technology and the way it's going up like the past 5 to 10 years. And there's a lot of excitement about it, a lot of new startups coming up. So if I want to get into that sphere, work for like a company like Steemit or something, that's just coming up and that is relatively small. There's a lot of new technology. What are some of the advice you can give for that?
Good question. So, the interesting thing about Steemit is they currently have a 16-year-old high school dropout working for them as a developer. So, pretty cool story. No diploma either. I always say if I could go back, I would have dropped out of middle school. But regarding that, it comes back to building a digital paper trail. That's how you do it. I know this guy named Jeremy Gardner who we were both really interested in crypto kind of at the same time at the University of Michigan. We held this event called it was at the time called the College Cryptocurrency Network. It was launching it essentially. We brought out Jeffrey Tucker and he came and spoke. He was hammered. And he came and spoke and basically talked nonsense the whole time. But still a fun event. And I remember being on stage with this kid. And, we both bought some Bitcoin. He bought way more than me, and so now he's a millionaire. He doesn't really have any coding skills, but he went out and became a huge name in the cryptocurrency space by writing about crypto, by going and talking at conferences about crypto, by having the College Cryptocurrency Network, which lent him all this credibility even before they had any members. They had 1 or 2 colleges in their network, nobody else, and suddenly he was getting speaking invites. And so he just wrote and talked about it at every conference. He became super active, everybody knew him, and then he got involved with Augur, and was working basically as kind of their chief evangelist for Augur, where he would again go around and idea behind having, I think, it's a decentralized prediction network. And now he's a huge name. And I think that's the thing that I've seen with other people as well. Like, I know a guy named James Walpole who's working in the crypto space, and he actually apprenticed at BitPay through Praxis. So if we can give you a job at BitPay if you want, right away. But yeah, so he apprenticed through BitPay. He now runs their marketing department, and he did a very similar thing. He got some work experience, and then he started writing about crypto. I know a guy named Steve Patterson who wrote a basically an introductory book about the reason why crypto is valuable. He has no credentials about crypto, but he wrote an excellent book, and now he gets invited to speak about Bitcoin. Start creating something. That's how you get the credibility, and that's how you become known. Whether it's in the libertarian space and you want to be there, or the crypto space, or like for me, I write about career stuff, and I talk about career stuff. I have videos about career stuff. I do podcast interviews about career stuff. That stuff all lends itself to getting opportunities in that space. You might start a podcast on it, or create a club around it, or some other kinds of resources around it. But start doing that now. Make everybody know what you're interested in. And what's interesting is people will start to, through their networks, refer you to other people. So I hope that helps a bit. But be a prolific creator. Be interested and interesting in something, and share it with the world, via some kind of medium. And trust me, it'll take off. It'll take 6 months to a year, but it'll start to bring out some really cool opportunities. Lastly, I would say get your foot in the door at some kind of crypto company. Like, you don't need to have any experience, really. My girlfriend works at Steemit, and she's their office manager now, basically setting up their entire new office in Austin. And she had no experience in crypto. She's never bought Bitcoin or anything, She just kind of knew generally because she's a libertarian what it's about. And now she has that job, and she could leverage that into a whole lot of other spaces. And what's nice about the crypto space is there's all sorts of random little upstart crypto companies that you can go work for. So I would start there.
So I guess one question that I would love to ask is just, you definitely dropped out of college, but for someone who is contemplating whether dropping out or staying in college, what are some of the reasons why they should stay in college, and what are some of the reasons why they shouldn't stay in college?
Yeah, I think you should stay in college if you have a really concrete goal for what you want out of the experience, and you know what you want to do afterwards. I think you should probably stay. Certainly if you're going to be a doctor or a lawyer, you kind of just have to stay because of the current laws, though I would like to see doctors without degrees. I think it's totally possible and doable. But yeah, I think in general, that's probably the best reason to stay. I'm not sure there's a whole lot of other reasons to stay. I'm kind of biased against it. I think that, reasons to leave are you're no longer finding it valuable. It's not valuable. There's nothing can justify that. If you're not finding it valuable, there's no reason to stay. You wouldn't do that in any other area of your life because there's so much social pressure to stick with college. We lend it this sort of like, it has like a religious-like quality where it's very hard to question it and challenge it. But if you're not finding it valuable, don't stick with it. Just like if you're not finding your relationship valuable, don't stick with it. If you're not finding your job valuable, well, you might need that just for a temporary time because you need to eat, but in general, don't stick with it. If you're not finding a friendship valuable, don't stick with it. It's very common sense advice, but we tend to forget that with college. I think that other reasons to leave, if you have a clear opportunity, that's a really awesome reason to leave, but if you don't have a clear opportunity, that's not necessarily a reason not to leave. I didn't have a clear opportunity, I just knew that I wanted something more than what I was getting in school, and I figured I could figure it out on the way. What else? Other reasons to leave. Well, we talked about this at dinner, just the sheer fact of having 2 to 3 years of extra work experience will do wonders for your career, more than anything else. And we talked about this too. When you're starting at age 20, there's a lot more forgiveness than when you're starting at age 23 and 24. People will look at you differently. You can make mistakes in ways that you couldn't make them when you're older. You can also accelerate your career. There's something about being the young person in the room. If you do something that's like just above average, you look incredible. And people all want to help you, and they all want to work with you, and they all want to hire you. Versus if you're 24 and you do the same thing, no one cares. Like I've noticed that. It's been a personal experience of mine. I was 20 starting out doing some marketing work. Like people gave me, way more attention and credit than I really deserved because I was young and I was the only person my age doing it. That's a good reason to leave right there because you're making the most of your youth, and turning that into something valuable. But yeah, the biggest one is just 3 to 4 years extra of time building a career for yourself. That's just so huge. I mean, there's jobs that you're gonna go after when you graduate college, each and every one of you, that's gonna be like an entry-level job, and it's gonna say 2 years of experience. Like, it's just gonna say that on the application process, and it's gonna be like, well, how can I compete? Of course, you can use a value proposition, and you can sidestep all that, but, you know, that's huge, getting that experience. And not just the experience from your resume. Something happens when you get work experience. You get a year or two of really like full-time work, your mind changes and you start seeing opportunities. And you're gonna figure things out about yourself and about the world and about business and about your goals and about personal finance and about the opportunities that are open to you much faster than you will if you wait till you're 24. It's gonna take a couple of years. So the difference is you can be starting at 24 in a really great position when you've already been working, you know, from 21 to 24, or you can be, you know, waiting until you're 27 or 28. That's what tends to happen from what I've seen. Hope that helps there. Any other questions? Nobody else has any career goals? Well, I don't want to keep you guys all here if you don't have questions. Do you have a question?
So I had this idea that I told Raj,
Yeah.
and it's a little bit crazy and like unreachable, but I wanted to like leverage, like, you know how there's a lot of these companies like that are crowdfunding with cryptos,
Yeah, I see that.
and they're raising like a certain amount of money, like 200 million, 5 million.
Yeah.
And I kind of wanted to start a company. I already bought the domain name to Microbution, where I will try to, you know, find, say, 20,000 to 30,000 people. They contribute, say, you know, tiny amount of Bitcoins, and all goes together, and then, you know, and I want to use that money to, like, buy real estate.
Interesting.
And then when I buy the real estate, I wanted to get tenants, and then with tenants, every month, convert the fiat currency back into cryptos, and
Yeah.
yeah.
And
The problem is, you know, somebody gives me crypto, how do I find, like, immediately how to, like, convert that into fiat?
yeah, well, big day would be one way to do it.
Yeah, but, like, will they, yeah, but it's just so much, you know, like, and then I have college, and you know,
Yeah, I mean, you know, I don't know, the only way you can know is just by trying to do it
yeah.
and asking someone to send you Bitcoin. You know, the reason one of the reasons I hate like business classes in college is because they have you do these like mock business plans and stuff like that, which essentially mean nothing because you're not called upon to actually do anything with them, and you're not called upon to actually sell anything. You know, it's very easy to have an idea and everyone to tell you it's awesome. I won't tell you your idea is awesome or not awesome, I really don't know. It's very easy to say it's great when you're not called upon to spend money on that product. And so, and I've experienced this in my own life, you know, I've had ideas and I think like, oh yeah, everyone's gonna wanna do this like this, and then, you know, you actually try to sell someone on it and no one wants to give you money. The same person who said that's a great idea, I would totally buy it. But even with Praxis, we've had so many people tell us, oh yeah, I totally wanna join Praxis, yeah. Like, okay, great, sign up. And they're like, whoa, that's a lot of risk, you know? So you gotta get out there and really try to build your product first, and that's how you'll know. If you don't have time because of college, well, you know the answer to that. You know, the other thing to consider is go get a job first in a crypto space, and you'll probably meet some people who can help you, you know, make your idea better and even work with you on it. You know, that's something useful to do as well. And if you want to get into the crypto space, what we talked about, you know, with Raj is kind of a similar thing. Like, while you might not be able to work on your big business idea right now, don't let the fact that you're not an expert or you're not ready to do this prevent you from doing something smaller, like getting active in you know, the crypto space by going to events or, you know, writing or podcasting or speaking or, you know, organizing events yourself or, you know, whatever it is that you want to do. Don't wait. All right, well, thank you guys. I appreciate you guys coming.